Hey class, so for your next assignment, you will be creating and learning about biological illustrations. This is actually a very huge field to go into. If you do a little bit of research, if it's something that interests you, you'll find that it's very much needed. I will introduce the assignment to you, and as you know, this is my last week of school with you as I'll be going on maternity leave. And Mrs. Grossman will take over and she will continue this assignment with you. All right, so what is biological illustration? All right, a biological illustration is the use of technical illustration to visually communicate the structure and specific details of biological subjects of study. The scope of biological illustration can range from the whole organism level to microscopic. It's really the study of anything that is living. Where would you find biological illustrations? Well, you can find them in many places. A lot of the ones that you see here in this image, they're medical illustrations that maybe you would see in a brochure, in a doctor's office, on a poster, keep saying doctor's office, online, on an informational type website, in your science textbook, right, in your biology textbook, or even in some sort of a zoo or botanical garden. Here are some examples of biological illustrations. Now, they definitely range in many different ways, from studying or looking closely at the anatomy of something, the inside of something. So a lot of biological illustrations might dissect parts of an object, for example, here like the human eye. Some of them you might see in textbooks going over different parts of an object, like for example, here a skull. But you also have a lot of biological illustrations that deal with nature, with plants, more botanical, like plants and trees, birds, and different types of animals, underwater sea life, things of that nature. And all of these things are very important and necessary to learn. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have seen illustrations like this all over textbooks that you have and then you study from in school. So for your project, you're going to be creating a biological illustration. What does this entail? Well, I would like to see something similar to, or we, meaning Miss Grossman and I, because we were talking about this together, something similar to like this fern plant. So not only will you be drawing the fern plant, you will be learning about that plant that you're drawing. So give us a little bit of information about it and label parts of it. So whatever object you choose to use in nature, you will have to label parts of it. You will draw it by hand first, and I will explain a little bit further. This is my example. So I did not finish it, but just to kind of show you different routes. So you can take a digital route and work digitally, or a traditional route and work by hand. And I'll show you step by step my examples. But you can see that I used an azalea as my flower or my object, all right? And I drew the object from life, so I had an actual azalea. And I did some research on the actual plant, and I also started labeling it. So these are like the beginning aspects of what, we would like to see from you. So even though biological illustrations might look like the anatomy of the human eye, and you might see someone dissect the inside of an eye and label it, that's not really what we're looking for. We don't want to see medical illustrations like this. or even medical illustrations like this. We're looking more for something that you find in nature. So if you have seashells that you found by the beach, or beautiful flowers outside blooming, specific plant life that seems interesting to you, we would love to see you create some sort of an illustration from that. Please don't create something that looks like a rock, very simple. Try to create something that has interesting lines to it and textures. What we definitely do encourage is to, even look at how it grows or create some sort of root system to it if you wanted to add something like that. If you were doing a plant, you may not do a plant. You may do something like a seashell, right? You can see here that mine don't really have the root of the flower. I kind of ended at the stem, but there's a little bit more detail to it. So your project requirements. You're going to be creating a biological illustration of something in nature. Okay. The image must be drawn in proportion, all right? So, or just accurately, which I will show you. You must research your object and label parts of the object. You may use any materials of your choice, so you can work digitally or you can work traditionally. And this object must be first hand-drawn. You may not trace the object, both if done by hand or digitally. Now your object, I've shown you examples. If you have something that really interests you, shoot it by me today or Miss Grossman in the future, and we're definitely open to many things. We want you to have fun with this, and we want you to learn from it. Okay, so what you're going to start off with is we'd like you to go for a walk outside and observe the nature around you. Okay, obviously social distancing. And you might even have stuff inside your house. Your parents might have, or you might have beautiful plants inside your house that you would like to work off of, It was just Mother's Day. You might have beautiful flowers in your house. We would like you to collect a variety of objects and choose one that stands out to you the most, that you are most drawn to. From that, we would like you to research your object. So what is it? Explain the object in a paragraph format. So you can see I'm basing mine on azaleas. I have other reference pictures of azaleas. I have a diagram of the different parts of the azalea flower. So it's important to research your object, right? To really understand it. Then what we would like you to do is place your object on a white sheet of paper. All right, so this way it blocks everything else out. Take some pictures of it. All right, take some clear pictures of it. Take pictures of it as you would want it to see in your drawing, right? So you can use them as reference. Notice this picture here is the one that I used as reference for my drawing. Because even though I think these pictures are beautiful, like I think that one's a really pretty picture of the azalea, you can't really see the different parts of the azalea. I can't see the stem and the outside part. So I was trying to figure out the best picture to show all parts of that flower. Even this middle flower would work as well. If you have a printer, all right, or if you have Photoshop, you can actually create a grid in Photoshop and work off that. But I'd like you to print your picture out. And in order to keep the drawing accurate, one way is to create a grid. So what you could do is create a grid on your printout. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just using this to create the shape of the object. As you can see, my printer is running out of ink. The first thing you're going to do is draw a diagonal through the image. Okay, when you draw the diagonal through the image, you can find the center point of the object, which then you can draw a vertical line through and a center line to find the center points. And this will help you to create a very simple grid that will break your picture down into 6 parts. On an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, I would like you to create that same grid, right? And use that as reference. So looking at your image, break each part up into each of these triangles and that will help you to keep the accuracy of your image. And I will show you in the video a little bit later on how we do this. If you don't have a printer, you can draw a grid, okay, you know, roughly this in proportion the same size as the 8.5 by 11. So if my 8.5 by 11 grid here is rectangular shape, and it's a portrait or vertical standing image, then I would create the same roughly same grid on a smaller sheet of paper. What you could do is place the flower on top of it. So notice I placed the flower on top of this smaller grid that I created that's in proportion with my larger one. And I can look at this. I can also take a picture of it and look at it from my phone, or I can look at it from life and then use the grid to help me really draw that flower a little bit more. Then you can begin drawing your object. So you can see here using the printout, but you could also create the smaller version too, like this. I started to really look closely at where different points and lines fell on the flower in different triangular parts to the grid that was created. And as you can see, I'm just drawing the outline of the flower and trying to match it accurately with what's happening in my picture. So from there, you can see I really tried to match up what was going on in each triangle part. And then once I really got that outline down, I began to erase some of my lines. So I'm erasing some of the lines through here. And then completely started to erase all of the lines once I liked the flower in the position that it was in. How will you add detail? Okay, so you should all do this by hand. We would like to see you draw it by hand first, and then if you're going to work traditionally, you can work right off of this image, and if you're going to work digitally, you can take a picture of it and then bring it into Photoshop, Illustrator, Procreate, whatever painting program that you would like to use, and you can then you can trace over your drawing. I just don't want to see you tracing over a photograph. All right. So how will you add detail? Right. So this is when you want to think about, are you going to work traditionally or digitally? So this is the one I did by hand. So you can see I used a pen to outline the flower, and I used colored pencil to color the flower in. Blending colors, I started adding darker values to areas. I was using the picture reference. I was using this picture reference to add color. All right, so I was going back and forth from this picture to my drawing, right, to see where darker areas would be and lighter areas. And then after you finish your flower, you would label the parts of the flower, right? So you can see I started referencing, I went back and referenced the diagram that I had, and I would continue to then add all these parts to my picture to finish my biological illustration. All right, and then this is my digital one. So what I did was I took the picture that I created, brought it into Photoshop, created new layers, and added my outline to it, added my color to it, and then also began adding my labels using shapes like lines and borders and type. All right, so that is the assignment. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am available until Friday. So please, if you have questions, let me know. And if not, Miss Grossman is gonna take over. We've already gone through this, and Miss Grossman and I went through the assignment together and came up with this for you, thinking it would be a really nice assignment. So if you have any questions moving forward next week, obviously you will be working with Miss Grossman. And that's that. So be safe and stay well. I miss you guys, and we'll keep in touch.